Welcome to the Sleep Sense Show. As always, brought to you by the Sleep Sense program, where podcast listeners can get a free customized sleep plan by going to www.sleepsense.net/listen.
Hi, this is Dana. Welcome to the show. If you are a new parent and your child has not been sleeping as great as you'd like, I bet you have done some research online. Most people, when they get a little frustrated with their baby's sleep habits, tend to start looking around for advice and suggestions. One of the most common pieces of advice is often establishing a bedtime routine. And I can remember way back now, 16 years ago, in fact, when my son was not sleeping well, and I started to look into reasons why, and saw everywhere I looked this talk about the bedtime routine. And at the time, I can remember feeling like this is just filler, right? Like this is just somebody needed to think of more than one or two things to say in this article, and so they continually drone on about this bedtime routine as a way to kind of fill space, fill the page. And I kind of thought I shrugged it off. I thought, oh, this isn't that important. But hey, I'm grasping at straws, so let me try at least and see if it gets me anywhere. Now, just establishing a bedtime routine for your child is not going to magically solve all of your problems and have a child sleeping gloriously through the night. There's a lot more to it than that. But I will tell you now that I've been in the sleep business for the last 15 years that bedtime routines are extremely important. It is not just filler. There's science behind it, and it's extremely important to the quality of sleep we have. Not just for children. A bedtime routine for adults as well is also crucial to your sleep hygiene and to the quality of your nighttime sleep. So I'm hoping you'll take maybe even a few tips you learned today and start applying it to your own sleep, your own hygiene, and see if it doesn't start making some difference. Now, let's talk about why first. What a routine does is basically cue your body and brain that it's time for transition from day into night. I mean, that's a pretty huge shift, right? Like day and night, they really couldn't be any different. And so our body needs time to prepare for that arrival. And a bedtime routine of about 20 to 30 minutes is a great way to start cueing the body and the systems to get them ready for this big switch. And it helps calm things down. It helps calm your mind down. It helps calm your body and get you ready for this big thing called sleep. So, I've very rarely met anyone who, when they stop to think about it, don't realize that they actually do have a bedtime routine. Usually involves things like brushing your teeth and getting your pajamas on and having a drink of water, going to the bathroom. Those sort of maintenance style things are part of the process, but also incorporating some enjoyable activities into the routine can also really add a lot of value and help you fall asleep peacefully and in a timely manner. So let's look at it for kids. I'm going to share with you too one very, very crucial and common mistake that almost all parents are making in the bedtime routine. I'll save that for the last. So research does suggest that a consistent bedtime routine, it's just as important to a child's developing brain and bodies as the number of hours that they get in a night. So if you're new to this parenting gig, I will tell you that your child needs 11 to 12 hours of nighttime sleep. And it doesn't really matter how old your child is. I'm talking all the way from infancy to adolescence, 11 to 12 hours of nighttime sleep. Now, there are, on occasion, a rare child or two who falls into more like the 10-hour category. That is within the realm of normal, let's say, but more averaging would be 11 to 12 hours. At adolescence, once they hit puberty, there's a pretty significant change in body clocks, and they might start dropping down. But it's not very much. It's only maybe 9 to 10 hours of nighttime sleep all the way through the teen years. So it's a lot more sleep than people think, and it's certainly a lot more sleep than a lot of kids are getting out there. So that's a little side perk. Hours. Let's make sure we're getting enough hours. But having that consistent bedtime routine before sleep is just as important to developing brains. The second reason why it's so important is because that repetition and the structure in the routine is actually really reassuring to the child. It adds to a level of safety and security for the child. And this is, one of the things that a lot of parents miss or they just don't get is that when you are really consistent with your boundaries and your structure and your routines, it actually makes children feel more secure because they know what to expect. There's no surprises here. This is, if I push boundaries or I step out of line, this is what I met with every single time with ultimate consistency. And then they breathe a sigh of relief and think, okay, I know what the rules are. I know who's in charge here. I know what's expected of me, and they do better. And really, don't we all do better, right? If we're in the workforce and we know what's expected of us, we understand the structure, the consistency is there. Our boss shows up in the same way every day. That adds to a more peaceful and most likely productive workforce or workplace. So the same is true with kids. So keep that in mind as you go forward. And also, the bedtime routine can absolutely and should be a beautiful time in the day for nurturing the relationship you have with your child. We are all also busy, right? Most parents say they're absolutely run ragged all through the day. We tend to spend a lot of the time that we have with our children giving them instruction, right? Get your shoes on, get your backpack ready, clean up your bedroom, brush your teeth, get your pajamas on, right? That's more instruction, not actually quality time. And children really they need both. There's a time and a place for instruction, absolutely. But they also need that connection, that I'm just being with you. I'm seeing you for who you really are. I care about what's going on in your little world in your mind. And that can only come from quality time being spent without a lot of distractions. And that's hard to get in today's busy world. So if you focus that 30 minutes every night on just putting your phone away, giving your child 100% of your attention, it absolutely will nurture your relationship. You will see a positive effect from this, even just that little bit of time, 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so that's the reasons why it's so important. Now let's talk about how do you do it right. There are some do's and don'ts to the bedtime routine. All right, so the first thing we want to do is set the stage. It's very important that you have a sleep-inducing environment or something that is sleep compatible, let's say, and that requires a few different things. One is lighting. Okay. Now I know a lot of children talk about fears of darkness or fears in general, and so night lights can be a great solution to those sorts of things. However, the night light that you choose is very, very, very important. It needs to be emitting a yellow or red glow, and it should be soft enough that it's not really illuminating the room that much. I prefer that you put it behind a dresser or a chair so that it's just giving off kind of a soft glow to the room and it's not too intrusive. Nothing that glows blue or green. Those are absolutely the worst colors on the spectrum of light. We know that blue or green light interferes most dramatically with our melatonin levels, and melatonin levels are very important. That's a hormone that our body produces, And it's, we call it the sleepy or the Dracula hormone because it helps our bodies and brains relax and feel sleepy enough that we can fall asleep and actually stay asleep for the duration. So light is an absolutely terrible interference to that. It just is. It's just biology, and there's no way around it. So if you can avoid it, that's better. But if you can't, then something soft glowing of yellow or red is important. Temperature is also important. We tend to sleep better when we're slightly cooled. And so a good temperature is somewhere around 70, 72 for your child, and it'll feel a little chilly. But that's okay because they're going to be under covers. And our body, if our body heats up even a little bit too much, it stimulates a wake up in all of us. So if you're experiencing any kind of nighttime wake ups, the first thing I always tell people to do is lower the thermostat, make it cooler in there, and that might solve the problem just presto, just like that. So make sure it's cool enough and dark enough. That's very, very important. I don't like a lot of toys in the crib or the bed with the child. That's not the message we're trying to send. It is not playtime. It is sleep time. We want them to understand that every time you go to this place, you're there to sleep. That's your job, okay? So one lovey is okay, like a little stuffed, soft toy of some kind. Make sure it's safe. There's nothing they can pull off and get into their mouth. A lovey can be a really comforting piece of the bedtime experience, so definitely start including that. But that's really it. No mobiles, no, those aquarium things that sing on the side of the crib bars or lights flash or anything like that. Nope. Out of the crib. Okay? And if your child starts asking for more toys to come to bed with her, your answer should be no. Feels like it doesn't matter. I get it, but it does, right? And that's a shift in the boundary again, a little push of the boundary, and you gave in. So guess what? Tomorrow she's going to ask for even more things, or ask for other things, or push boundaries in other ways. So you really have to be black and white. It has to be that way, and know that actually that's better for her. Okay, so once we've set the stage, we want to look at how long the routine should be. Nothing more than 30 minutes. If it's longer than 30, it's just too long. Period, right? And the child is probably getting overtired because it's dragging on too long. It's not predictable to the child's body and brain because there's too many steps. We want it to be about 4 or 5 steps long. And your child will be able to anticipate what's coming next, and all of that is important in the process of getting them ready. So if you've got a little one that's still having a feed, you can absolutely include a feed in that routine, but it should be, in the parameters of that 30 minutes. Now, if we're talking about newborn babies or really young babies, they tend to nurse a little slower. So we could add maybe 10 or 15 minutes to that routine if we've got a baby kind of taking 20 or 30 minutes at the breast or bottle. That would be okay. All right, so who's going to do this routine? That's another important consideration. I think it should be as many people as possible, to be honest, because we want this child to understand that it doesn't really matter who is doing the routine. If we're going to teach them great sleep skills, which is definitely a huge part of this, then it doesn't really matter who puts them to bed. Grandma could do it, Daddy could do it, the babysitter can do it. Everybody's equal in this. So when you're starting off, absolutely between you and your partner, alternate nights. If you're breastfeeding, then okay, that piece probably has to be you, unless you're pumping and giving breast milk in a bottle. That's also doable. But Daddy could do, or your partner could do, any other pieces of the routine, and then you could come in for the breastfeeding section. Now, what kind of things should we include in this routine that will make it both predictable and enjoyable? Well, I love that routine. I love it when a routine starts with a bath. I think a bath is such a significantly different event that it is a great cue. It is a great first cue, actually, to the bedtime routine, especially for babies, especially even for little babies. There's not a whole lot that goes on in their day that's very different, right? It's feed, sleep, poop my diaper, feed, sleep, on we go. But a bath is pretty significant, and so that's a great highlight that we're actually transitioning from day into night now. Now, do not panic if your child does not relax in the bath. I hear all the time, oh, my child just gets really wound up in a bath. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I have never met a child who just relaxes in the bathtub, right? Like that's something adults do, yes. Children, no. So that's fine. If they have a great grand old time in there, yay, that's awesome. You're there and you're playing in the tub, either in there with them or you're beside them and you guys are engaging and having a nice time and playing with toys. Fine, and actually excellent. I would cap it. I don't want to see this drag on for too long because we're keeping an eye on that 30-minute window. So 10 minutes, maybe 15 is long enough for you both to have a fun time and get out of there. We don't want to, it's okay for that they're having a great time, but we don't want them to actually become overstimulated, and too long in the tub that might happen. Okay, after tub, obviously we're getting on some pajamas. If there's teeth in the mouth, then we want to brush teeth, comb hair, do those sort of maintenance style things. If there's a feed, let's save the feed discussion because that's where we get into our common mistake. Book reading, love it. I love it. I'm a teacher by training, so obviously I love to see that reading habit established right from infancy onwards. Now, sometimes kids are getting a little too fatigued or a little cranky by the time the story rolls around and they don't really want to sit still for too long. Just read a page or two. If they're not into it, that's fine. I don't want to see two very important things to avoid in the bedtime routine. One is random playtime, right? There's no random playtime here. There's not going out into the living room to play with trucks or any kind of play. No, there's time for play all other times of the day, but not in the routine, just because that's too vague and the child will not understand the structure and it won't move in a step-by-step fashion enough that the child will begin to predict what's happening. So no random play. The second thing is no screens. No iPad, no videos, no television, no computer games, none of it. Okay, this is important. This is the biggest sleep stealer that I see in children and adults. And I'm being generous here by saying not in the routine. My rule of thumb is not for an hour before bed should anybody be looking at a screen. It absolutely interferes with your melatonin on such a significant level that it is impacting your sleep, whether you think so or not. All right, so that's my heavy hand there for you today. Some people incorporate massage. That can be a great way if your child enjoys it to kind of have some time together doing some massage. But those are the main things, right? Jammies, baths, stories. Staying in the bedroom is great if you can do some of those activities in the child's bedroom. Again, that sets the stage. We're in this room. We're going to do a couple of nice things here together, and then you're going night-night. Now, before I let you go, the most common mistake that people make in the bedtime routine is that somewhere in the routine, they are inducing sleep, whether they're feeding their child to sleep, rocking their child to sleep, walking around the room until their child is asleep on their shoulder. So you've decided that it's your job to get this child to fall asleep. That's not their job, it's yours. And then you're putting them into the crib already asleep, and that is why they're not sleeping well. Bottom line, 100%. That is the reason why. So we don't have time to go into how do I stop doing this. You can find the answers to that in the Sleep Sense program. Any age from infancy all the way up until into the preschool age, if you've got a child who's not capable of falling asleep on their own, then absolutely that is your very next step once you get the routine in place. But no, we don't want sleep to start. We want your child to be nice and fatigued through the routine, then get into the crib or bed, awake, and fall asleep on their own. Okay, that's so important. Now, I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and it reads, "A child wears his fatigue like a pair of itchy, ill-fitting pajamas. And when a parent puts the child to bed with authority, on time, and with affection, it's like taking the child out of those icky, ill-fitting pajamas and into a beautiful, soft pair of well-worn PJs. And isn't that awesome? When you put on those well-worn PJs and climb into bed, what could be better? It's a great way to end a day. Thank you so much for listening. As always, sleep well.
Thanks so much for listening. For more great tips on helping your child sleep through the night, remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher, and never miss an episode.